As we continue this week's Giving Away special about guns in America, a day in the life, a look at a case that pissed me off. A 10-year-old boy was arrested for sending threatening messages, but there's a twist to the story. The 10-year-old was identified. The 10-year-old father was identified. Now, the father is speaking out to Inside Edition.
Marched in front of photographers as he's taken away in handcuffs. Then...
And now he's speaking exclusively with Inside Edition.
The video was jarring. A 10-year-old Florida boy marched in front of photographers as he's taken away in handcuffs. Then came this, a shocking mugshot, unblurred despite his age. The reason? Sending what cops say were threatening messages just 4 days after the Uvalde, Texas school massacre. According to the police report, Daniel Marquez, a 5th grader, sent a Google image of 4 assault rifles to a friend and texted, "I bought this," followed by another text, "Get ready for Water Day," an upcoming gathering for students with good grades. The other boy's father contacted police, and within hours, the 10-year-old was in cuffs, and his mugshot broadcast around the world.
To me, heartbreaking and very confusing.
Derek Marquez, an Army veteran, is the 10-year-old's father, and he's speaking out to Inside Edition. After 11 days, his son is still in custody at a juvenile detention center near Naples, Florida. Your son, is he a troublemaker? Does he have any kind of history of making threats?
He's never been in trouble. He's never had any type of disciplinary action, not even in school.
Do you understand, does Daniel understand that sending these messages after what we saw in Texas just seems like a huge mistake?
I don't think Daniel really understood the gravity of the situation.
The local sheriff, Carmine Marceno, is defending his hardline response. He says he released the mugshot even though Daniel is a minor to send a clear message. Do you stand by this arrest?
100% I stand behind this arrest. I say, well, as a sheriff, it's a 10-year-old. Come on, it's a 10-year-old. And I don't look into that threat.
What?
Okay, and next thing I know, God forbid, there's a mass shooting. God forbid he commits a tragic act.
What?
You and I are talking on a much different place, and it's all my fault.
Letitia Kim is the boy's attorney.
What was done by
What?
Sheriff Marceno was part of his larger political agenda. He has made it clear that he is the law and order sheriff. What we have here is fake law and order and real consequences to defenseless children, such as Daniel.
Meanwhile, Congress held hearings today on gun violence and the Uvalde massacre, including videotaped testimony from survivor Maya Cerrillo. She says she smeared blood on her face and played dead.
I thought he was going to come back to the room, so I grabbed the blood and put it all over me.
The United States Attorney General today announced an independent investigation into the delayed police response in Uvalde.
Shit! So what needs to happen here? Well, let me tell you what needs to happen here. Don't release the name. Leave the mugshot blurred. I don't care if you're trying to send a message out there. I don't think you know my rage. If he's a minor under 16, that makes him a juvenile. You can't release that type of crap. You know what's going to do to the families? They're all going to get angry. Actually, I had a conversation with my Lyft driver about this issue. And incidentally, he was right. What can it do to the families? It can anger the families. Look at Oxford, Michigan. Ethan Clements identified because he's 15, almost going into 16. Why is he being charged as an adult? Because of his age. The parents are adults. They say the names. But now, look at how Karen McDonald's going to feel when I probably send her this clip. Say, there you go. They used the name. They ran another school shooting. There you go. I don't care if you're trying to send a message out there. What needs to happen is, police, let me tell you something. Do your job right. Don't go exposing people's names, especially minors. If you're under 18, you are juvenile. And in some states, the police can't talk to you because you're a minor. Take the case of that Zumba incident with Zax. He was under 18. That means he's a juvenile. You know where juvenile? Do you know where you know where minors go when they're, you know where juveniles go? That's right, juvenile hall or juvenile correction centers or juvenile detention centers. But there is more to the story. When we return, Chris Hansen looks into High Plains Youth Center in Colorado. And you'll also meet Ron Davidson, the head, probably who inspected this. And we'll also take a look at the facility and talk to the inmates. We'll be right back. Up front tonight, as we continue our special Guns in America, A Day in the Life. It's all about children killing children. In the past years, it's happened in Jonesboro, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Mississippi, and plus Colorado, Michigan, Texas, Virginia, and Michigan. And each time you may have wondered, what should society do with such troubled kids today? Do you put them in prison or juvenile correction centers, or do something else? But in recent years, they turned to private corporations, but not without problems. Very serious problems. We're going to take you now to a facility in Colorado called High Plains. Here's Chris Hansen.
Dr. Ronald Davidson is on a mission. The University of Illinois psychiatrist has become a fierce advocate for that state's most troubled kids.
You got a little problem with the outlet here?
Hired by the state of Illinois, Davidson has spent the last few years inspecting more than 100 privately run treatment and detention centers housing Illinois kids.
It's not a good idea to keep it here.
He built a tough reputation inside the state, but it's his stinging attacks across state lines that are stirring up some of the most controversy. For some time now, Illinois, like other states, has found itself overwhelmed by the numbers of troubled children. And instead of building more treatment centers, it decided to turn to private corporations in other states. In just 1 year, Illinois spent $60 million exporting 800 kids to places like Florida, Arizona, and Colorado. But when Davidson was asked to evaluate shipping kids to those private facilities, he reached an early conclusion.
Well, I've also called it interstate trafficking in children for profit.
What's wrong with taking a troubled kid and sending him or her to Colorado or Arizona or Texas if, in fact, there's a facility there for treatment?
Good question. We're talking about salvaging the lives of children. And you cannot do that by putting a child on an airplane as if he were some toxic waste in a sealed container and dropping him in Texas or some other state.
Welcome to Brush, Colorado, home to the High Plains Youth Center. Although it's called a youth center, High Plains is really a for-profit juvenile prison holding kids with criminal records. Its mission, according to its own brochure, to change the behaviors and values of delinquent kids. An attractive alternative for some states. But at $175 a day per kid, the treatment doesn't come cheap. High Plains was earning several $millions a year by taking in Illinois kids. That is, until Ron Davidson came to town.
We know that young men and treat others the way we want to be treated.
High Plains is owned by the Rebound Corporation. It's home to young murderers, rapists, robbers, and drug dealers from 20 states. By 1995, there were 41 Illinois kids at High Plains.
This was a very troubled facility that in many ways had slipped out of control and was not providing adequate care in any stretch of the imagination.
Davidson's investigation in late 1995 detailed evidence of drug use, homemade weapons, and gang activity inside High Plains. He concluded that there was a consistent and disturbing pattern of violence, sexual abuse, clinical malpractice, and administrative incompetence.
Virtually every state that had kids in the program came out and did their own independent audits, and those audits were widely different from the audit from Illinois.
Bill Botkin was director of planning for Rebound when Davidson did his audit. We interviewed him last year for this story. He has since left the company. Rebound called Davidson's investigation inaccurate, biased, and malicious, and notes that High Plains passed a Colorado audit prior to Davidson's inspection.
And I guess the ultimate determination is this kid changed? Is he successful? Is he better off now than when he was when he started the program? And the answer has been yes.
Botkin cites studies showing that 70% of High Plains kids had not reoffended within 1 year after leaving the program.
I enjoy working with kids.
Staff members gave Dateline a guided tour of High Plains.
Is this tough work? Yes, it is. It's tough work, but it's also very rewarding work. We see the fruits of our labor.
We were also provided a group of High Plains inmates who talked about their treatment. One had been convicted of rape, another murder.
Do you feel now for your victim?
Yeah, I do. You know, I know what I did was wrong, you know, and I'm not gonna do it again.
My treatment now is successful. I'm saying with a lot of my problems, like when I first came here, had a quick temper, you know, towards my easy anger, and I can say this program has really helped me out a lot.
What did you find when you took the job?
I found chaos.
We spoke with a group of former Rebound employees. Most of them had quit the company. 2 were dismissed for cause. They all told us about serious problems at Rebound facilities.
They don't count on people taking a stand.
I really liked my job. I thought I did a good job. But with the blatant denial and the, you know, covering things under the carpet, I realized that I couldn't be loyal to them as an employee anymore.
One striking example, a High Plains inmate named Thomas. For about a year beginning in 1994, according to staff logbooks, Thomas was repeatedly beaten and raped by his roommates and threatened with being set on fire. Lisa Hansen was a High Plains counselor at the time.
Was it your feeling that they knew what was happening to Thomas and they were allowing it to happen?
Yes. I felt that they were allowing it to happen and they didn't want to investigate it. They didn't want to know. They didn't want to know what was happening in those rooms at night. They were afraid to know.
So they just swept it under the rug. More about High Plains when we come back. Now an update in Uvalde. You may remember we talked to you about the police chief who was hauled on his cell phone without using his walkie. Pete Arnaudo gave the Texas Tribune an account of what he did inside during that attack. According to the Texas Tribune, what happened at the Texas Tribune? A first meeting since the massacre, the Uvalde School Board takes no action on the police chief. But the reports say he had no response. He had no radio. He just used his cell phone. The school board's not doing anything about it. We'll keep you posted on what's going on in Uvalde. And on Give Me Break Saturday, we're going to hear from the survivors. And Give Me Break continues when we come back. Continuing now with our special Guns in America, A Day in the Life. Children killing children. We've just heard from High Plains employees who talked about sweeping everything under the rug and not dealing with it. But there's more to the story. Once again, Chris Hansen.
High Plains officials say while no inmates are supposed to be having sex, in Thomas's case, it was consensual. The situation was corrected.
My problem was the alcohol, then came the gangs. And you mix them two together, and that spells violence.
Steve Ashcraft was one of those Illinois kids sent to High Plains. He landed there after racking up a series of juvenile arrests for violent crimes.
I could have just stayed here.
Ashcraft admits he's partially at fault for not turning himself around at High Plains. He says there were some devoted staff members and teachers who furthered his education. But Davidson, Illinois' watchdog, found many of the staff unprepared to handle young criminals and their problems. For Ashcraft, it was alcohol.
I knew I had an alcohol problem. There's nothing that they had that could help me work on it.
In the time since Ashcraft left High Plains, Colorado audits of the facility show improvement. Even Illinois officials approved a corrective action plan by the facility. But former Rebound employee Lori Sturer, let go by the company, says audits can be deceiving. She claims she was told to lie to inspectors and falsify records at another Rebound facility.
That's a serious charge.
I've done it.
You were told to falsify records?
Yes, we know when they're coming, and so for weeks up until that audit, we're faking things. We look really good on paper.
Some former Rebound employees have told us that they were told by higher-ups to falsify records and documents before inspections.
We have never heard that allegation. That's certainly a very serious allegation. For us, that would be grounds for dismissal.
Have you drawn all these since you've been here at High Plains?
The company insists that as soon as problems are pointed out, changes are made. Colorado audits do show that in recent years there has been a reduction in violence in High Plains, as well as improved treatment programs and better staff training.
And we don't deny that there were issues here that we were working pretty aggressively on when Illinois came in and did the report.
But why has it taken outside investigators to come here and point out these very, very drastic problems?
We learned that lesson very painfully, and as a result of that lesson, we have set up that internal quality assurance.
But now, High Plains is under attack again. Colorado and other states are pulling their kids out of the facility. The action is the result of a scathing report triggered by the recent suicide of a 13-year-old High Plains inmate.
This child should have been on suicide watch, and that, in fact, this child should not have died.
Colorado officials say between 1993 and 1998, there have been a dozen substantiated cases of child abuse at High Plains. Information kept secret by local authorities. Information that ultimately became public after Dateline started asking questions of state officials. Colorado investigators say in the last year, High Plains staff have physically assaulted kids and had sex with them inside the facility, in addition to providing them with cigarettes, alcohol, and pornography. Rebound says staff involved in these incidents have either quit or been fired, but the company acknowledges it is the target of a new criminal investigation. Dateline asked Rebound for another on-camera interview regarding this latest round of allegations. The company declined. A spokesperson did tell us, though, that the Colorado audit was flawed, overstated, and that in some cases the child abuse allegations are not clear-cut. As for Steve Ashcraft, he found trouble again soon after coming home from High Plains. Our interview with him took place just 2 weeks after he got out of this Illinois adult prison where he was serving time for armed robbery.
The state of Illinois paid somewhere around $115,000 for you to spend 22 months at High Plains. What did the state get for its money?
Nothing. Dead weight. The taxpayers just lost a lot of money.
Yeah. There is, of course, no guarantee that Steve Ashcraft would have turned out any better if he'd been confined closer to home. But Illinois officials agree with him that the investment they made to send Steve and other juveniles out of state was misguided. From now on, those officials plan to do whatever it takes to keep the state's troubled kids in Illinois.
Very difficult.
And for Ron Davidson, who's been crusading for better treatment and facilities for the youngsters in trouble, it comes down to keeping a closer eye on the kids and on the money spent to treat them.
The bottom line for us is that we are going to do whatever we have to do to make sure that Illinois' kids are not treated like crash test dummies for corporations that don't know how to get their act together.
Late yesterday, Colorado officials announced they were shutting down the High Plains Youth Center and revoking its license to operate. A spokesman for the Rebound Corporation says the company will comply with the order, but claims officials violated state law by not holding a hearing before the shutdown. As for Illinois, since Dr. Davidson's initial report on High Plains in 1995, The state has reduced the number of children it places at out-of-state facilities from 800 to less than 200.
Okay, that was back in 1998, but obviously nothing has changed. So what's the situation here? Well, for juveniles, you put them in juvie, not in jail. Take the case of Ethan Crumley. They wanted to take him to juvie, but nope, he's in jail, adult jail. If you're charged as an adult, then probably you're probably going to juvenile hall. That's basically the whole key. But why the high planes shut down? Because they keep sweeping crap under the carpet. But nothing has changed for the kids and the guns. Yesterday, we told you what we looked into Eddie Eagle on gun safety and giving you some tips for the kids and for the parents. But when we come back, the question, should kids learn how to shoot guns? Juju Chang answers that question. With the Uvalde shooting happening, all these mass shootings happening, this Give Me a Break special, Guns of America, A Day in the Life continues by answering this question. Should kids learn how to shoot guns? Here's Juju Chang.
Line is hot. Everybody's got eyes and ears on.
Right. These girls are grade schoolers. Most are still losing baby teeth.
Nice! Perfect. Look at that.
But home on this range outside of Austin, Texas, playdates require serious firepower.
Tell them what her name is. What's your rifle's name? Barbie? Is it because it's pink? Yeah.
Vanessa is one of 7 pint-sized shooters attending what's called the Little Girls Youth Training.
Put that safety down. Good girl.
Part of a growing trend promoting shooting sports for kids.
When I shoot, I think it's so much fun than playing with anything else that's in my room.
Vanessa's just 7, but the gun industry is looking for young shooters like her to ensure growth in the future.
When you teach kids that young, you take the mystery out of the gun. They know to respect it if you teach them to respect it. Okay, so I'll say.
Nikki Jones leads the Austin Sure Shots, a women's-only shooting club that runs the kids' training course. Though this event is independently sponsored, turns out the National Rifle Association and other industry-sponsored organizations pour tens of millions of dollars every year into youth shooting programs nationwide. But should children this young really be trusted with potentially lethal force?
So what we always start with are the 4 basics of firearm safety.
Nikki begins with the fundamentals.
Rule number 1, treat every firearm like it's loaded.
Golden rules of shooting that the girls who range in age from 6 to 11 seem to have down cold.
Don't point your gun at anything that you're not going to kill or destroy.
A critical lesson, since once, almost every hour in America, a child or teen is injured or killed by a gun, often fired accidentally by other children.
What made you think, okay, she's 6, she's ready to try this? She has seen the weapons in our gun safe. And she was asking questions. That for us was an important time to utilize that to educate her. Safety, drop your magazine.
Some liken it to playing with fire, but Vanessa's mom believes training with guns will actually make her daughter safer. She keeps several guns, including Barbie, locked up at home. The star of the event is 9-year-old Gia Rocco, who shoots like a regular Annie Oakley.
Good. Give me 3 on the right.
Skills that Nikki says are about sportsmanship, not self-defense.
We don't teach them to shoot around barricades. We don't teach them to clear rooms. We don't teach them what happens in a carjacking. I mean, it's pure sport.
And for a promising sharpshooter like Gia, training doesn't stop here.
You want to take us into the trailer?
Oh, sure, yeah.
The next day, she and her dad invite us over.
Well, this is where we clean the gun. That's the art table.
The art table next to the gun table. Nice.
Gia still loves her Legos and her pet spider.
I don't like, princesses and stuff. I'm not a princess.
But hold the tiaras.
Half of Gia's rifles.
How many do you have in there?
These are clearly her prized possessions.
Wow, that's like an arsenal.
This one right here is my favorite. That's my 8-shooter.
What do you call this one? Your love gun.
My love gun.
It's got hearts all over it.
Yes, it does. All of my rifles and pistols.
There's a lot of people looking at this will scratch their heads and say, why does a 9-year-old girl need all these guns and rifles?
Well, they all have different uses. I mean, like some competitions, practice, ski.
The gun business is booming, with sales spiking even after Newtown.
That's an AR, obviously.
But analysts say that's because those who own guns are buying more guns. Overall, national surveys indicate gun ownership is decreasing.
This one.
Young hotshots like Gia represent a demographic that the industry considers vital to the future of gun sports. She has a fan page and her own industry sponsors.
Stand by.
Her dad, Adolfo, hopes sharpshooting will someday pay off for Gia with a college scholarship.
That's what I'm talking about.
Or even Olympic gold. And when she isn't training, her dad says her guns are strictly off limits, kept locked away, even though Adolfo believes Gia would never disobey him.
Man, I would bet my life that she would never touch a gun that she wasn't supposed to. I would bet my life on it easily. Right?
Right.
And now when you're ready, shooter ready.
But critics argue that's a risky bet for most parents. Training and trust may not be enough to prevent accidents. Kids and guns, they say, simply don't mix.
Kids are impulsive, and you can't teach that out of a kid, right? You can't.
Dr. Denise Dowd helps write policy for the American Academy of Pediatrics. She says kids' brains aren't mature enough. They lack impulse control.
You can teach them, they can pare it back, but they should not be in independent control of that weapon.
In her Kansas City Children's Hospital alone, there are 30 to 50 cases annually. Tragedies, she says, that are entirely preventable.
You don't trust your kids 100% of the time, especially when it comes to something that is so high risk.
Our colleagues at 2020 put the question of impulse control to the test with a series of hidden camera experiments. These boys and girls in Florida are trained to never touch a gun without an adult. They even memorize the NRA's popular Eddie Eagle safety video.
Now stop! Don't touch!
But when left unsupervised with real unloaded weapons hidden in plain sight, nearly half of the boys act on impulse. 8 out of 23 of the girls do too.
Oh my gosh, right there bazookas.
Instead of calling for an adult, they play with the weapons, sometimes mistaking them for toys.
They're not real.
This pink gun is called the Cricket. Manufactured by Keystone, it's one of several rifles on the market designed to appeal to kids.
Dude, that is a real gun. It's not funny.
Nearly half of guns in this country are not locked away properly, and guns accidentally kill kids in the U.S. 10 times more often than any other developed country in the world.
How many times does it have to happen before people say it's enough? It's enough for me. It's enough for me. I didn't choose to sacrifice my child to this. The children and I keep a watchful eye on his candles.
Jody Sandoval keeps a memorial for her son Noah in her Columbus, Ohio living room. He was just 14 when he and his best friend Levi were playing at Levi's grandparents' house.
Levi found a gun behind the television. He removed the clip and he pointed it at Noah and he fired a shot. He didn't realize there was a bullet in the chamber.
Listen as his shaken 14-year-old friend is questioned by police.
And the bullets flew out and everything. I was holding my hand and I booked through and I thought it hit the wall and it hit him.
Throughout his interrogation with police, Levi has no idea his gunshot was fatal.
Do you think we should tell him what happened here? I do too. No, it didn't make it. No, it's dead.
Levi pled guilty to reckless homicide and was sentenced to a year of probation.
His baby blanket.
Noah's mom, Jody, says she doesn't blame Levi for her son's death. During trial, she even asked the judge to lower his sentence.
While Levi made a horrible, terrible mistake, it wasn't an accident that a gun was left out where it could have been stored and knocked away.
While 14 states have safe storage laws, which studies show reduce accidental shooting deaths among kids, Ohio has no such law.
If it saves one
But Ohio
person from the
needs
horror of what my family and I are facing, just one,
It's enough.
The NRA, which turned down our multiple requests for an interview, has repeatedly opposed such laws, saying they infringe on gun owners' rights to effectively protect their homes. But the organization does recommend that guns should be stored securely until ready for use, making sure that they're not accessible to children. Back on the range, safety is always a top priority for the Sure Shots.
I have to say, all of you were very safe.
Youth Training Day ends with diplomas.
All right, first we're gonna look really neat.
And a very memorable class photo.
Amy, look this way.
It's clear these kids and their parents believe deeply in the right to bear arms at any age. What remains unclear is whether this new generation of shooters will bring new life to a $30 billion industry.
Our thanks to Juju for that report. Does teaching children to shoot guns make them safer? Tell us at Nightline.
And I'll answer that question when we return. Throughout this past half hour, we have been looking at guns in America, a day in the life, and asking the question, should kids learn how to shoot guns? Well, here's my answer to that. 50-50. Yes, 50% yes, and 50% no. Why do I think about that? Why did I come up with that answer? Well, if you really think about it, think about it this. The 50% part for yes is like this. If the child is ready, the child has to tell you that he or she is ready. That's the 50% part for yes. Now the other 50% is how the child treats the gun, like it's a toy. If you feel, as a parent, if you feel that your child uses a gun as a toy, it's your job to lay down the law and say, I don't think you're ready to shoot because you've been treating that gun like a toy. What I recommend, get toy guns. But don't bring them to school because that can get you in a lot of trouble. But what about guns in restaurants? Tomorrow on the broadcast, we're going to take you to a restaurant that has called the Shooters Club in Colorado. Since the Columbine school shooting, the owner is going to show us that her employees are armed and armed to the teeth. That's tomorrow. That's all for this edition of Give Me a Break Thursday. We'll see you again tomorrow morning and tomorrow night for Give Me a Break Friday. For all of us here at Give Me a Break and YouTube, stay safe out there. And remember, guns are bad. Good night.